Donbrothers! Let me ask you a question. What is your reason for living? I'm serious. What allows you to go on? Is it your work? Your loved ones? The goals you've yet to achieve? The friends you've yet to meet? Even when things are dire and there's no hope in sight, what is the one thing that drives you and makes your life worth living? Let me set the stage. In the year 2018, Hasbro officially acquired the Power Rangers license from Saban Properties. This was not the first time the franchise rights had been sold. In fact, Saban had sold the rights to Disney in a past life. However, this acquisition came with major changes. First of all, the show would slowly be moving away from using footage from Super Sentai, the whole inspiration for Power Rangers in the first place. Now relying more and more on original stunts and scene work using Super Sentai costumes, Power Rangers finally started breaking away from the stringent format of writing around fight scenes and toy reveals from the source material. This, coupled with a desire for a more unified universe and overall lore, allowed for the Power Rangers franchise to evolve with the times. To sell its own original merch and not rely so heavily on their relationship with Super Sentai's owners at Toei or toy manufacturer Bandai Namco. And while in the past, Super Sentai had even reached out to the executives of the Power Rangers franchise around the Neo-Saban era for input on toys and gimmicks for seasons such as Q-Ranger, it was clear behind the scenes that things had somewhat soured. So, a partnership lasting over 20 years had finally dissolved, leaving both Eastern and Western proprietors as spandex-suited silly men to plan for their own original continuations. Flash forward to 2021, the world is still recovering from COVID-19, Japan being no exception. Toei and Bandai Namco are panicking, with toy sales and general popularity for Super Sentai declining ever since 2013's Kyoryuger, and the franchise's 45th anniversary coming to a close. The beginning of the Reiwa era seemed grim for the longevity of Tokusatsu. At least, that's what you'd think. Instead, longtime producer Shinichi Saruhara devised a devious plan. A Hail Mary of epic proportions to bring back fans young and old to the franchise. Hey, esteemed Tokusatsu screenwriter Toshiki Inoue. Yes, Shinichi-kun. I know it's been a while since you've written a Sentai season. I mean, nothing can top Jetman after all. Yes, I'm aware. But I have an offer for you. What is it? Free range on every script, okay? You can be as unconventional as you want. Intriguing. And we don't have to market to Westerners anymore, so you don't have to worry about worldwide toy sales. I do hate toys. So let's get the party started. Thus, Avataro Sentai Donbrothers was born. An unconventional, compelling, hilarious, tragic, and 100% only in Japan kind of show that I, the jaded fan of Power Rangers that I am, absolutely adore. And like every other tokusatsu adjacent media I've covered previously, I want to explore why it works so well in spite of its many issues. From its characters, to its budgetary decisions, to its batshit crazy plotline it follows, Avataro Sentai Donbrothers may not be the best television show ever made, but it's certainly THE show of all time. That's it, that's the title of the video. For those uninitiated that for some reason are still watching this video, Super Sentai is a very budget show. It has a high budget, given it's funded by both a toy company and an entertainment juggernaut like Toei, on top of surprisingly good cinematography at times, but it's still budgeted. Yearly, I might add. So while watching, you'll be very quick to notice that despite having jurisdiction to film in public in various business venues, Donbrothers likes to limit its sets to either pre-built locations like Cafe Donbura, Kijino's office and apartment, and external shots of Tokyo or wherever the hell they're filming that week. That budget is also allocated to stunt work and fight choreography, which per usual is handled pretty well and for the most part practically. I don't know if you know this, but the people acting in the suit scenes are different actors than the one who morph into those suits. So, they need a paycheck on top of the main character actors, which there are 9 of. So, with a limited budget but a desire to differentiate themselves from previous Super Sentai seasons, Shinichi Saruhara was either adamant about the creation of, or potentially was just ordered on high by executives, to integrate CGI characters into the Donbrothers lineup. This would be achieved through both digital modeling as well as motion capture, integrating them seamlessly into fights with little issue. Saruhara explained that this choice was made for the sake of unique Ranger silhouettes as well as figures based on them, and I totally understand that. However, I completely get why people are hesitant to watch a show with heavy CG animation, especially if that animation is of a black dog man running around shooting things and a giant pink bird man stumbling half the time, while the other half of the scene he's flying around willy-nilly, barely attacking the enemy. Sometimes they have close-ups using real suits or props that replicate the proportions, but it's not as often as you'd want it to be. It is 100% justified to not like the CGI in the ground fights. Same goes for some of the mecha fights later on in the series. The toy combinations they use in these scenes being so cumbersome in real life that it's hard to believe it can even stand. For mecha fights, it's not bad. It's actually really good. It's just when it's integrated into live-action footage that your extension of disbelief starts to wane a bit. Okay, I brought up the CGI. I gave a warning about the CGI. If you are still interested in this series after that long-winded explanation, you've passed the pleb filter. Let's talk about these suits. So in Donbrothers' pre-production phase, Shirakura and staff were debating on using Journey to the West, the classic Chinese novel about monk Tripitaka and his companions, including Son Goku of the Dragon Ball franchise, as direct inspiration for the season's aesthetics. While widely marketable due to Goku alone, they instead went with the legend of Momotaro, a Japanese folktale about a boy born from a magic peach who goes on a journey with his animal buddies to slay evil Oni that have infested the land. With that framework and the mandate for CGI characters came a unique end result, with 3 human suits of varying builds and 2 CGI character suits both big and small. Red being Momotaro, blue being the monkey, black being the dog, and pink being the pheasant. But the strangest thing about this lineup is yellow, which is an Oni. This is important to note for thematic and plot purposes, but we'll get to that when we get to that. For now, it's pretty fun conceptually, despite the implication that the only girl on the team is a literal demon. But these aren't the only suits in the show. There's the base mecha forms, the combined mecha form, enemy suits for the primary antagonists, 2 suits for the auxiliary Gold Silver Ranger, another suit for the villainous Ranger who, spoilers, is a talking sword, and a gold super form suit for Don Momotaro. On top of that, there's also 50, count 'em, 50 monster suits, one for every respective episode. That's a lot of money spent for a lot of unique designs, which brings me to another fun aspect about Donbrothers. It's a pseudo-sequel season. Donbrothers is the 46th Super Sentai season, the previous season being Kikai Sentai Zenkaiser, the 45th season and the 45th anniversary of Super Sentai. While Zenkaiser pokes fun at a lot of Super Sentai tropes and ideas, it's much more of a comedy than Donbrothers is. However, direct concepts and thematic elements have been lifted from Zenkaiser into Donbrothers during both productions. The Sentai gears, which were made originally for the Zenkaiser morpher, were modified and remolded into the Senpaiger gears for Donbrothers. The significance of these gears in the narrative is very loose, but thematically adds to the idea that anyone can be a hero, at least according to the Donbrothers Meet Senpaiger special. More on that later. Don Momotaro's cameo in episode 42 of Zenkaiser introduces a new mecha combination for Zenkaiser's mecha gimmick, Don Zenkaio, which Momotaro uses for the first 7 or so episodes of his own show before completely forgetting about it. The reason for this particular mecha creation was due to the simple fact that they hadn't finished making the Donbrothers mecha yet, the first widely sold mecha toy for Sentai with proper joint articulation. That sounds small, but that's fucking huge. People love posing action figures. So on top of reusing assets from the prior season for cost-saving measures, Shirakura had the balls to put the prior season's protagonist into the show as a pseudo-mentor figure. Why did they do this? Is there a lore justification in the show for its existence? I don't know why, but Zenkaiser's whole existence is basically a running joke in the show. Cafe Donbura literally reuses the layout and external set for Zenkaiser's own cafe set. It's a meta thing where at some point characters just outright ask Kaito, who, that's the character's name by the way, it's Kaito, exactly who he is, and he just says,
俺はヒーローとして生まれ、ヒーローとして戦い、ヒーローであり続ける者。
On top of Kaito being Zenkaiser Black and mysteriously providing Deus Ex Machinas and plot details, the show just has fun at the expense of fans expecting there to be a direct crossover at some point. And of course, you don't need to watch Zenkaiser to enjoy Donbrothers. I viewed it without watching Zenkaiser and had a ball doing it. It's just optional. Now that I've laid the groundwork, you've probably been wondering what exactly this show is about. The year is 2001.
9/11.
On his daily jog, scientist Jin Momoi sees a crack in reality. From the crack, a peach-shaped pod lands in the river. Reminded of the legendary folktale Momotaro the Peach Boy, Jin cautiously approaches the pod before it swings open. Revealing an infant boy within, Jin takes it upon himself to raise the baby himself, naming it Momoi Taro. I get it! Bravo, Inoue! 21 years later, 17-year-old mangaka Kito Haruka is awarded for her manga's Hatsukoi Hero record-smashing debut. Everything seems to be going Haruka's way. Her peers respect her, she's popular on social media, and she was even saved by a mysterious man in blue from a human-turned-monster the night of her award ceremony. Her dreams are finally coming true. Until, out of nowhere, she discovered she's been in the Matrix this whole time. Kind of. In truth, she's been randomly gifted strange abilities from a slot machine app on her phone that allows her to see the world for what it really is. Full of techno-colored doors, teleporting people around the world, and monsters wearing human skins called Anoni. Before she's cornered and killed by the Anoni, she's gifted a weapon that can fight back against these monsters as well as many, many other antagonists. The Dawn Blaster. While Haruka may have survived the encounter, her entire life is turned upside down. She's been accused of plagiarizing a manga she didn't even know existed, ruining her reputation and forcing her to work part-time until she can find inspiration once more. In order to solve this injustice and return to her normal life, Haruka is told by Jin, who drags her into his metaphysical prison, to find Taro and swear fealty to him. Taro will show her the way. And so, unsure who Taro exactly is for 3 straight episodes and swearing her undying loyalty to his cause, Haruka gets her ass kicked and becomes a proper member of the Donbrothers as Oni's sister. A role she must undertake in order to get her life back on track, find out the mystery behind Momoi Taro, and get herself out of this creative slump and start making manga again. That is the quickest way to summarize the premise of Donbrothers without getting into full frontal spoiler territory. It's pretty high concept for a 20-minute children's show. The world, though a contemporary Japanese setting, is the right level of anime cliché that it doesn't lose its charm, and is fleshed out enough to give you satisfying answers to those many, many mysteries the show decides to set up. There's idols, high schoolers, TV-friendly Yakuza substitutes, even the occasional drifter through town looking for their girlfriend. Side characters are sometimes introduced as one-off jokes or monsters of the week before becoming recurring cast members or, in the case of Base Kobayashi who really hits that grind, a further monster of the week due to their intense desires. Desire is something to keep in mind here. A dangerous little thought can spiral into a million in this world, ones that overwhelm anyone apparently, without reason, creating monsters that must be stopped. In most cases, these monsters known as the Hitotsuki are stopped by the Noto. The Noto are tulpas. They don't look like Melissa from Mike and Melissa, but hey, they're still kinda hot. What? They come from a dimension layered above ours, which feeds directly on human thought to survive. They're hyper-intelligent and magicine-enhanced beings, but they're still petty enough to wage wars with each other for power and, well, revenge. Obviously, the Noto are responsible for the creation of not only the ranger powers of this season, but also many, many, many toys that Taro gets to play with. Such as shrinking into a toy version of himself, which is apparently faster. Do we get explanations for where all of these things come from? No, because Inoue doesn't care about shilling toys. He's here to get his sick kicks, wondering why people ended up not liking Kamen Rider Kiva in the long run. Giving you stories you wish you could say you expected, but didn't. The Noto are at first depicted as more alien than Taro, struggling to understand human emotion, even trying to replicate it despite their status as higher beings. Over time, however, we see that this interpretation of emotion can be achieved, but that Noto society overall is just pretty corrupt. Shocker. Not shocker as in shocker, but shocker. Moving on. The Noto are able to transform into battle forms similar to ranger suits, the only difference being that their designs are actually directly inspired by past Toei Tokusatsu characters. And while the Noto will kill these monsters for the sake of preserving human thought as a resource, the Donbrothers' goal is to defeat and purify these monsters back into human beings. Desires cured and mortality returned. Does this stop these monsters from being created? No. Does this solve any problem long-term without confronting the Noto world and getting a better understanding of how monsters are made? No. Will that happen at some point? Kinda! For now, and for many episodic but continuous shenanigans, it's a duel between these two factions and another faction of creatures looming on the horizon. A theme I mentioned before in regards to the Gears is this idea that anyone can be a hero, that regardless of who you are, you have the capability of doing good and being someone's hero in a situation. Whether that means you're turning into past Super Sentai heroes or just helping a kid get their ball back from traffic, doesn't matter. You can be a hero in your everyday life while still just, well, living. This also feeds into the other major theme of Donbrothers that ties directly into this negativity of intense desires. Living for something. Living in the present and embracing what you have while it's still there. People who turn into Itotsuki are obsessed with either annoyances in their present or things that they've lost over time, including a member of the Donbrothers more than twice. And this obsession proves to negatively impact the lives of these Itotsuki victims, whether they're a man dying in a coma or a literal ghost. Instead of grasping a hold of what they cared for and lived for in their day-to-day, they fall victim to petty annoyances or the FOMO of unachieved dreams. Donbrothers as a series proves that some of these things really don't matter in the end. It's the fact that you experience these things in the first place that matters. That applies to the relationships especially. Throughout your life, people come and go whether you want them to or not. Loved ones, rivals, work associates, pets, your relationships with these people shape your present self. Cherishing them, regardless of how bad things may get, is at the core of this series. It's really about human connection. Tell me if you heard this one before. An autistic delivery man, a self-filleting homeless poet, a self-absorbed teenage mangaka, a love-longing, truth-seeking fugitive, Goku with dissociative identity disorder, and a meek Japanese salaryman walk into a cafe owned by an eldritch abomination. The shenanigans ensue? Like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia before it, a group of genuinely awful people makes for one hell of a team. At first, you question how this team will become uniform in the future, especially since they don't realize who the Black Ranger is until 6 episodes are left in the season? Are you serious? In interviews, Shirakura outright stated that they wanted to subvert expectations and stereotypes related to Sentai colors, let alone the people who would be on a Super Sentai team. Again, anyone can be a hero, according to the promotional footage, so stressing that theme with a bunch of oddballs that have no right to be Rangers is a decent idea. The negative personality traits each member exudes, alongside their own interpersonal growth, is the real draw of the series. Seeing a bunch of people who would never hang out or associate with one another become real friends by the time the season's over. Real heroes, if you want to use that term loosely. It also helps that the cast clearly have a lot of fun on and off set with each other, their chemistry and even their performances shining in the latter half of the series. Let's run through our main Donbrothers as well as our auxiliary 6, and you'll see what I mean.
Daniel.
Momoi Taro, also known as Don Momotaro, is a 21-year-old delivery man who takes pleasure in bringing joy to people in their day-to-day lives. Born too perfect to the point of being ostracized from greater society, Taro had basically no friends growing up outside of a pet beetle that ran away and Jin, his parental guardian. Physically unable to lie and often abrasive due to his slights with other people's incompetence, Momoi Taro is the absolute best subversion of the Gary Stu kind of character I've ever seen. He is protagonist man, through and through, and he does not care who knows it. His annoying social traits are amplified in combat when he takes on a more boisterous and rambunctious personality. His iconic laugh echoes through the battlefield as he's carried into fights by a miraculously appearing series of servants. To Taro, life is a festival. Everything you pass on your journey is part of your tale. Every stone you touch is a new bond forged. He's both the best friend you'll ever have and the worst person to ever associate with. This personality always causes friction in the team he leads, constantly leaving out details the other members of the Donbrothers are not privy to. That's also helped, or hurt, by the fact that Taro's training methods for his companions are pretty sadistic. Shooting at his own teammates when the battle is over, routine training after fights to get them in shape, literally using them as limbs for a mecha transformation. Taro is a nutcase, and I kind of love him for it. This is also compounded by his relationship with the outwardly heroic but secretly antagonistic Noto known as Sonoi. These two are boyfriends, pretty much. I will stand by that. I fucking love these two together. Gay! Sonoi goes from the enemy of the Donbrothers and rival to Momotaro to debatably Taro's most trusted confidant in the final few episodes. The biggest difference between these two mind deities is the fact that Taro doesn't really give a shit about them being rivals, at least at first. I don't want to spoil too much, but Taro is really something special as a Red. He grows and changes as a result of being a part of a team, and it's endearing to watch happen. Mysterious origins for his toy gimmicks and all.
片思い口笛で呼ぶ流れ星
Shinichi Saruhara, also known as Saru Brother, is a pacifistic, struggling artist who lives out of a lavish, abandoned temple, giving advice and country doctor cures to whoever comes for his aid. Saruhara has an incredibly active imagination, to the point of feeding himself imaginary meals when he's out of food, as well as coming up with one haiku per episode he appears in. Sotodeiku. He's incredibly vain, sometimes lazy, and very self-important, but does show genuine social and strategic intelligence on top of a desire to do good. Acting often as the voice of reason in the show, Saruhara is an unconventional choice for a Blue Ranger, but somehow fits the bill despite his outwardly untrustworthy appearance. He's the one asking questions about the origins of their powers, what Taro's deal is, the allegiances of their enemies, etc. He's smart, just not in the typical book-smart nature Blue Rangers tend to be. Or in the secondary leader sense, since he's active but not really the main secondary in this story. Though, over time, he really grows into that secondary leadership position, truly showing that behind his wabi-sabi hobbies, he's someone you can truly rely on. He's also allergic to money! He chooses not to get a job routinely because he physically cannot hold money, or else his skin burns. I fucking love Super Sentai. Kito Haruka, our Oni sister in Resident Yellow, is a struggling mangaka just about to graduate high school. The youngest member of the team, she's often the POV character that breaks the fourth wall for occasional jokes, while also being our primary lead when Taro isn't in the spotlight. Her main arc is of course proving her innocence from her plagiarism accusation, while also grinding to get a new manga out for public consumption. She's originally the most hesitant to be a part of the team, as well as the team's punching bag, but she slowly but surely grows into a dedicated member of the Donbrothers after some slight time manipulation. You know, a healthy amount. Just as selfish, if not more so than Saruhara, incredibly bad at cooking and driving, and prone to rage-fueled outbursts, Kito Haruka is the ideal woman. Kito Haruka is a hot mess that gets less messy over time with the help of her team members, as well as the Noto called Sonoza, who became enamored with her cancelled manga Hatsukoi Hiro. Basically kidnapping her until she turns out good work at one point, the two become close friends due to their collaboration as editor and artist, pushing Haruka to do better and be better as a creative. Haruka's great, just don't ask her to make beef stroganoff.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Come on.
Inuzuka Tsubasa, aka Inu Brother, is our wacky black dog ranger who is constantly on the run from the law. Accused of kidnapping or possibly murdering his missing girlfriend Natsumi Kuramochi, Tsubasa's running gag is that he's always running away and always treated like a literal dog when he's transformed. He's the last person to reveal their secret identity in the show, and it's pretty satisfying when we get to that point. Especially because we learn a lot about Tsubasa, him taking a lot of the A and B plots throughout the narrative to set up both the mystery behind Natsumi as well as his relationship to the other enemy factions. An excellent chef, a pretty decent actor, the son of an actual criminal who claims he's innocent, and an overall handsome fella, Inuzuka Tsubasa is a very fun character due to the fact he's everything a Black Ranger should be, but also isn't. His arc is the most compelling given the amount of time spent on him, especially his journey to rejoin hands with his beloved Natsumi, but is also occasionally interrupted or aided by the Noto known as Sononi. Sononi is basically Tsubasa's true love interest, given her obsession with the human concept of love, and while she does come off as a bit flat sometimes, she does have her moments of genuine chemistry with the lad. Tsubasa's arc is fun, and takes a large share of the actual plot progression, but his arc is intertwined with yet another character who shares equal amounts of screen time. Here's the boy! It's Tsuyoshi Kijino, aka Kiji Brother, the first male Pink Ranger. He's a new male salaryman who has literally nothing else to live for but his newlywed wife Miho, who he's only known for around a year and a half. Obsessed with his wife and making sure he provides a good home for her, Kijino will do anything to keep his beloved Miho safe, even if it involves some dubiously questionable choices. Often meek, neurotic, but great for the occasional burst of comedy at his expense, his arc is tied directly into Tsubasa's because, surprise, it's a love triangle! Aren't you just thrilled? Miho looks exactly like Natsumi, but isn't exactly Natsumi either. The details of that are essentially an Invasion of the Body Snatchers situation, where Miho is an alien monster creature, but has the memories as well as dual ownership of the body as Natsumi. But Kijino is in such denial over this concept, he lashes out whenever his wife's validity is brought into question. Hell, he gets Tsubasa arrested for kidnapping his Miho during one of the best acted scenes in the show. Kijino is a fascinating character to me, especially thematically, because other than his relationship with Miho, we don't know a lot about Kijino. No mention of his parents, no interests outside of work, a general lack of confidence and unique skills. Kijino is the most average and incredibly sad member of this team because he only has his wife to live for at the end of the day, the one he truly loves. Also, Kijino going berserk against Tsubasa is one of the most fun parts of the whole series. Please give it a watch. I don't want to spoil more about my precious pink boy. And lastly, Momotani Jiro, also known as Don Turagoku, also known as Don Toraboto. So that's where the journey to the West inspiration went. This fucker. Saved in a similar fashion to his cousin Taro, Jiro was raised by a police officer in the remote village of Gaga, surrounded by a loving group of childhood friends who helped suppress his inner violent, power-hungry urges. Developing an on-again, off-again romance with his childhood friend Rumi, Jiro's goal is to become a real-life superhero, leaving home for the big city to achieve his dreams. This is of course achieved through helping the Donbrothers and eventually saving Taro from a temporary imprisonment, but after Taro returns, Jiro becomes a bit superfluous. He isn't bad, but he genuinely annoys everyone he's friends with. He's too happy, too energetic to keep up with, too eager to please people. And for someone who wants to be the greatest hero ever, he doesn't have a lot of fans. So those inner violent urges manifest within Jiro as Dark Jiro, taking the silver form of Don Torabolt, acting as a split personality Jiro must balance in order to master his powers. This arc is handled pretty well, all things considered, especially the inevitable truth behind Jiro and his dark personality. So, big spoilers ahead! This is now a Jiro analysis, so be warned. Jiro is Taro's substitute, not just for fighting against the Noto and any Hitotsuki threat, but also for defending the Juto Forest, a forest meant to house monsters created as artificial fuel for the Cerebrands. Jiro was isolated from society and raised by a Juto in order for him to fulfill his purpose one day. This included manipulating Jiro's perception of reality, making him remember false memories and seeing people that were never really there. That includes all of his childhood friends and the memories they made together, even the times Rumi had come to visit him in Tokyo. Jiro, the entire time, was simply a tool for a greater cause, sheltered from the rest of society. Jiro finds peace in this eventually, mirroring his arc with the evil ranger quote-unquote known as Don Murasame, a weapon born with an Oedipal split personality who is constantly seeking to kill the Noto's enemies. Murasame experiences a crisis of identity before eventually fighting Dark Jiro in the middle of the series. Talking to Murasame post-combat, Stable Jiro and Dark Jiro offer their own perspectives of being two halves of one person. How through understanding and working with each other, each side has gained a better perspective on their own flaws and goals. This eventually leads to Jiro and Dark Jiro post-mental breakdown, realizing that one cannot live without the other. So, they join as one, maturing and finally becoming bearable to everyone around him. But more than that, Jiro has finally become a hero worth admiring, one worthy of leading the Donbrothers into battle. This whole arc is pretty tragic once you break it down. Could it have been handled better with time and more focus on Jiro throughout the show? Yes. Am I happy we have an arc like this at all for a Sixth Ranger? Absolutely. Jiro is a mixed bag, but I'd rather have that mixed bag filled with a ton of bittersweet moments than not having this arc at all. This group of absolute buffoons and deranged sociopaths who shouldn't be working together become this excellent team and group of friends that are constantly endearing. Whether it be trips to the water park, meals at fancy restaurants or Odin stands, even harebrained schemes like faking being Saruhara's family to expose a scam artist. The cast of Donbrothers bounce off one another in such fun ways you can't help but smile. While there's tension from Taro not giving away all the necessary information, as well as the squabbles between Pink and Black Rangers, the journey to these six becoming friends is such a fun adventure that I can't help but recommend this to anyone who's interested in hearing it. That's not even mentioning the interpersonal dynamics and growth of the main Noto trio, the secondary villainous Noto trio, the time that Taro made the Cerebrand leaders eat his limited time sandwich because he was mad he didn't get to eat it himself, and all the general wackiness this series exudes. I brought up this idea at the beginning of what do you live for? What keeps you going in your day-to-day? What motivates you as a person? I think each member of Donbrothers perfectly encapsulates that message. Taro lives to make people happy. Haruka lives to make her art. Saruhara lives to simply follow his bliss. Kijino lives for the one he loves. Tsubasa lives for the love of others, and Jiro lives simply because he wants to do good. So I want to ask you the question again. After learning about the series, its many problems and great things it achieves, what is it that you live for? What is it that makes you get out of bed in the morning, look yourself in the mirror, and say, I can move forward? For me, it's the people closest to me. And my work, including this channel, where I get to share all the stuff I really enjoy with people who may enjoy it too. And to me, that's all that matters. Thank you for watching.